Apple unveiling new subscription services and next generations of the iPhone, iPad, and Apple Watch, all at the Buy Innovation Only event. Bill Detweiler here with me now to dive a little bit deeper, Bill, into some of the announcements from today. So what do you think are some of the big trends coming out here of this event?
You know, Apple has been on this path for a while. They've been moving from a products company to a services company. And you heard Tim Cook use those words multiple times at the event today. So I really thought it was interesting that they didn't even get to hardware until 20 minutes into the conference. And the first two things they talked about, which I know you're going to talk about a little bit later, health and Apple TV Plus and Apple Arcade. Those are all services that are layered on top of Apple's hardware. And so I think that's the big takeaway for me, is that this was really about how Apple hardware gets customers into their services, onto their platforms, and onto their software.
All right, and Bill, you know, in terms of business buyers, and we talk about the iPhone and some of the other things coming out of the event, what do we take for them?
Yeah, so I'm kind of hard pressed to get excited about a phone anymore, honestly. We've got advances that, you know, for the business buyer that, you know, run all the software they want to run. The hardware's good enough. The cameras are good enough. The fingerprint sensors are good enough. The facial recognition is good enough. So even from handset manufacturers, whether it's Samsung, whether it's Huawei, whether it's Apple, whether it's, you know, pick your manufacturer, I haven't seen a lot to get excited about a phone in a long time. You know, I talked about Samsung's new Note 10 a while back, and I was excited about it from a business perspective because I was really interested about whether it could be a replacement for a desktop with its DeX support and the ability to sort of project the phone onto a monitor, with its ability to sort of do some secure some divisioning between work and personal files and folders, and virtualize some of the apps. I thought that's cool. You know, today from the iPhone event, we saw lots of really cool things about video on their cameras. That's great if you're a creative. We saw lots of cool things about photos. We saw lots of cool things about the display and gaming and the hardware that it takes to run that, and battery life. Those are great from a consumer perspective, but from a business buyer's perspective, you know, I didn't see much at a hardware level that really got me excited. All the hardware in the phones being used to do video, being used to do gaming, being used to do displays. If you're running spreadsheets, if you're running, you know, looking at apps, doing email, doing things like that, kind of hardware doesn't necessarily get me that excited. So for business buyers, it's a solid phone. It's a solid upgrade. There's nothing, you know, there's nothing wrong if you're already in the Apple ecosystem, but it's still, you know, it's a little meh when it comes to pure hardware play.
So Veronica, we were talking with Bill about some of the specifics with the new iPhone and the subscription services. But in terms of health, they're really Apple focusing on their commitment to health and through the Apple Watch. Talk about that a little bit for us.
So people thought it was going to be about glucose monitoring. That didn't come up, but they talked a lot about falls and cycle tracking for women, and also more heart health. They enrolled 400,000 people in this heart tracking survey study, and the idea was to spot when your heart starts beating out of rhythm, because that's a sign that something is wrong. And so what better way to find out than your watch telling you, hey, something's wrong with your heart. Doctors are a little skeptical about how accurate that really is, but it is certainly a good warning sign. And they used the video to talk about an old guy who fell, and his watch called 911. A dad whose son has autism used the watch and his headphones to deal with some of his anxiety around crowd noise, so he could still run and ignore the crowd. So it was really sort of an interesting mix of, we're helping you, the individual, but we're also contributing to, you know, research and understanding and a deeper plan to address health problems a lot of us face. So it was a really interesting mix of you, the individual, and improving our understanding of health problems in general.
And I think that the video that they kicked it off with, as you mentioned, showing the different ways, pulling on the heartstrings, really, you know, so that people feel like this is something that they can look to help keep them healthy. And there's so many facets to the Apple Watch to keep in mind.
Right, right. And one woman described the data as a force, you know, nudging you to stand up. Or I think they are focusing on women's health a little more. And one of the stories that the watch users told was a woman who was pregnant and her heart rate was spiking, which was hurting the baby, so she had to have a C-section. And so it was a really compelling look at how data can help you at least know when to call the doctor. So you're not being a hypochondriac, you're really watching out for bad signs.
Yeah, some great things there, Veronica. Well, you know, we've got you covered on all things Apple from the Buy Innovation Only event. You can stick with Tech Republic and ZDNet.